Hello, this is Yulia with Resilient Life Counseling and Wellness in Farmington, Utah. And today is our first Tuesday talk that we're taking on the road. And we're absolutely thrilled to be here with Sam Huppi, who is a therapist in the community. And, when we were thinking of June being Men's Mental Health Month, we really wanted to bring in an expert. And Sam is such an expert. And Sam, if you don't mind just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and maybe what's important for us to keep in mind for the men in our lives. How do we help them thrive and support them in their mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like she said, my name is Sam Huppi, and I have a private practice that's also here in Farmington called Huppi Counseling. And my kind of main focus is I work with individuals and couples, all genders and all gender orientations, but a big chunk of my clientele is men. And having a big kind of focus as a mental health professional, but also as a sex therapist, to be able to kind of discuss the overlap of mental health and sexual health, especially within relational health. I think of men's mental health a lot in this capacity that if we're talking about men's mental health, we have to be talking about this concept of masculinity. And there's a lot of different ideas or lenses that people can look through, like what masculinity means. But I think for me, a lot of the men that I work with or that I interact with, there can be this strong learned socialized history of performing masculinity, but not having a lot of permission or experience for themselves emotionally, relationally, or sexually integrating, being with themselves and like in a whole body experience of these different aspects of life and personality in an integrated and a healthy way. So in my practice, that's a big kind of focus that I bring, or I want to bring. How do we talk about mental health, which is about our emotions and our relational experience, but also sexual health and how they overlap with each other and influence each other.
Yeah. Well, what are some things that you really enjoy about your practice?
Oh man, there's so much that I enjoy about it. That's such a good question. I really love creating a safe place to be able to talk about things and to have an opportunity for a lot of clients, and a lot of times it can be the men, to be able to like, oh, I've never told anybody this before. I've never felt like I could name this, or I never thought I would say this out loud before. And that's such like a sacred space to be in. It's so important. And I feel so passionate about having a safe space for everybody, but especially men, to be able to talk about their sexual health, and especially to be able to talk about sexual health, not from a framework of, well, we're going to talk about it because you got caught doing something bad or wrong. Like for so many men, the price of admission to talk about sexual health is you got caught doing something wrong, and then we'll talk about it. I think it's so important to be able to talk about it and normalizing it outside of that kind of binary, rigid lens that it can often be for men. But that also, again, goes for like the mental health and emotional health space too. Of like, well, we're only going to talk about it when there's a problem. We're only going to talk about it when there's this big issue, or someone is begging or forcing you to go and to discuss to somebody of like, can we normalize, can we have access to these spaces of connection and community and vulnerability, and normalize that, and not have it be, well, it's the only thing that it's the end of the line or the last thing, the end straw that you're going to have to be able to do when all the other crap's hit the fan.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from you is perhaps if it were possible, which I think it is possible, you'd love to see your clients sooner rather than later, not when they come to you in the depth of hurt or shame or some other really difficult experience, but rather where we pursue sort of the next level, right, of happiness and integration and closeness in relationships.
Yeah, that it's okay. This is a big part of men's mental health, of like the message, like it's okay to ask for help. Or this idea of like, well, I can only ask for help if it gets this bad. When it's this bad, then it's valid for me to then struggle. And it's like there's this whole other experience and spectrum of life of like, what you're struggling in, that's okay that you can struggle there too. And it's okay to ask for help. If we can normalize the asking for help, we're gonna have such better outcomes.
Yeah, of course. In every area, right?
In every area,
for every person.
For every person,
Yeah. Well, what do you think, as a therapist who works in this space a lot, and I gather a lot of your clients are male, although not exclusively, right? You serve everyone, sounds like. What I don't want you to feel like you're on the spot to dispense mental health advice as if you are working with an individual, but in a more general way, what would you want people to know if they have somebody in their life, a man in their life, how can they encourage them to seek that support? Like what are, in your experience, what are some effective ways to encourage men in our life to seek therapy before it's dire straits?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, some of my initial thoughts, and we'll see if this is coherent, but some of my initial thoughts of sometimes with the men that I work with, we get this kind of polarization of I've been taught that it's not safe for me to have emotions.
Yeah.
That I must perform, I must produce, and that it doesn't feel safe for me to do otherwise. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not performing and producing or having a perfectionistic lens on this thing to be able to provide in this way, I feel like I'm failing. And so if I feel like I'm failing, I also have to keep that to myself. And I have to suffer with that silently, because I also can't show the vulnerability that I may be struggling with that. So I think being able to, a place of helping and being able to normalize that, especially within your relationships, that it's okay for you to struggle. I want to know about your struggles, and that knowing about your struggles, I'm not going to have a perception that you're a failure, or that you're not hacking it, or you're not the right kind of man. That can be such a sensitive, tender space for men. I'm not doing this thing that makes me not the right kind of man. So inviting that vulnerability and making it okay, while also on the opposite end of that spectrum, being able to encourage men, especially if it's a heterosexual relationship and you are the woman, that, oh, I love you so much, babe, but I can't be the sole source of your emotional intimacy and your emotional needs. For some men, they have very limited or no access to emotional intimacy. And then for some men, they've kind of socialized, I can only get emotional intimacy through my romantic partner.
Yes.
They're my sole source. They must be able to provide it for me. And that can be such a pressure and weight and expectation to place on these women to be able to provide that. Of being able to normalize and encourage it, I can't meet all these needs, which doesn't mean I don't care about you. It means I care about you so much that you need
the
friendship,
support, right?
Yeah, friendship, community, connection, spaces where you can be vulnerable, not just with me.
Yeah.
Because if it's just with me, I can't meet that emotional quota. Well, also, it's a disservice to you. You are worthy of more spaces than just one, to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, and to still be loved despite a struggle or a failure or a vulnerability or an insecurity you may have.
Yeah. Well, one thing, so I do a lot of couples therapy, and one thing that I've witnessed really consistently is when men, in, once again, heterosexual relationships in particular, when men become vulnerable, the women do not turn away. They scoot closer. They literally will scoot closer.
Yes.
And they will often say that this is the closest I felt to you in a long time. So that vulnerability, I understand the hesitation to some extent, right? Socialization, everything. But man, once folks can open up in that way, it just levels up their relationship, right? Not in that very moment.
Yeah, especially when we can slow it down and name what's happening in the moment.
Yes, yes. I can see that you're a very experienced therapist.
Can we name this right here? Because we can experience this so quickly, and our nervous system doesn't even have a chance to
register it,
bask in it, marinate in it, because we're on to the next thing. Can we see you just shared something really vulnerable, and your partner turned closer?
Yeah.
Let's not rush past that. Can we sit with, you might have a nervous system perception, and a valid one, a learned history, that if I show a vulnerability, I'm going to have rejection or judgment or whatever it might be, it's negative outcome. Can we sit with this moment and slow it down? You just shared something, and here's attunement, and here's love, and here's acceptance. Ooh,
right?
How can we feel that? How can we embody that?
Yeah.
How can we get creative in this juicy flow of this? How can we keep recreating this?
Right. How can we inhabit it even more and more frequently?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. I think that rings very, very true to my experience in therapy as well with couples. Well, so, one thing you mentioned that I think is interesting is that, well, you mentioned a lot of things that I thought were interesting, but one that I want to pursue a little further is this idea that sometimes men, particularly in heterosexual relationships, will feel like the only person they can really open up to is their romantic partner. And you are the expert here, both on men and on maybe the sex and intimacy end of the relationship. What is there a connection? Is there a connection because this is a romantic and a sexual partner, that there's also that propensity to be more vulnerable with them emotionally than with other people? Like, is there a connection? I don't know if there is, but what would you say to that?
Sure. If I'm understanding your question, and
Yes,
please let me
yes.
know if I'm
Sure,
off the
I
mark a
will.
little bit, Yulia.
Yeah.
I think there is like a connection of like, well, like on one hand, in the sexual health realm, like sometimes there can be a strong polarization of male sexuality, of like either sex is the only avenue or vehicle that I have to have any emotional connection or intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I happen to be a human that actually has emotional needs, but I haven't been socialized to accept that or to expand that or to experience that.
Right.
So sex is the only avenue I can have. So I'm really going to crave or hyper prioritize sexual connection, which there's nothing wrong with prioritizing it. But if this is the only tool in my toolbox to be able to have that connection, probably going to be some relational difficulties or pressure or expectation or some sexual health principles that maybe aren't always going to be we're going to be in alignment with.